Good morning. Welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to start with a poem, a work of artifice. This poem is again in Treasure Chest. It's in the syllabus of class 9 ICSE. A work of artifice is written by Marge Piercy. Before we start the poem, let's first give a brief introduction. Okay. The poem, A Work of Artifice, was written by Marge Piercy in 1970. It is one of her earlier works. Okay, she's an American poet, Marge Piercy, and it was published in a collection called The Art of Blessing the Day. Artifice is something that is created by skill, often in a way that deceives or misrepresents something else. Okay, now in this poem, we'll see later on that the poet uses the bonsai tree as a metaphor for individuals, or to tell more precisely, as females who are shaped and controlled by societal expectations. The shaping process is an artifice because it creates a restricted, unnatural version of what the individual could be. The gardener's act of pruning. Now, the gardener also here is metaphorical. Okay, the gardener's act of pruning and the soothing words are a form of artifice. Now, why the gardener is a metaphor? Because the gardener also here actually represents the male fraternity. So, this gardener's act of pruning and the soothing words creates an illusion of care while actually limiting the tree's potential. So, now if we see the title of the poem is A Work of Artifice. So, the work of artifice or a work of artifice is quite apt. Now, let's start with the line by line explanation of the poem. Okay, and within that, while I'm explaining, I'll give the word meanings also. Okay, so let's start. The bonsai tree in the attractive pot could have grown 80 feet tall on the side of a mountain till split by lightning. So, first, let me give you the word meaning of some of the important words. Okay, so see, you've seen first, I've already told about artifice. What is artifice? Now, another thing also you can write it down. It's a clever trick. Okay, now the bonsai tree. So, we should first know what's the meaning of bonsai. Bonsai is a miniature tree grown in a container, carefully shaped and pruned to maintain its small size. So, it is actually a tiny, or more probably to say, a dwarfish. Okay, a dwarfish tree that is grown, it's carefully shaped out. Now we see split by lightning. What's the meaning of split? Split means to break apart, to tear. Okay, and lightning is a powerful electrical discharge in the atmosphere. So, first, what we see in this para, that the bonsai tree in the attractive pot could have grown 80 feet tall. So, the poet says that this bonsai tree, this miniature tree, is planted in an attractive pot. It could have grown up to 80 feet tall if it had been planted in nature along a mountainside. The full grown tree would have been so strong that it could only be damaged by lightning. So she's just telling that what could have happened if the tree was allowed to grow on its own, and if this bonsai tree was not put in that attractive pot. Okay, next. But a gardener carefully pruned it. It is 9 inches high. Every day, as he whittles back the branches, the gardener croons. Okay, so in these lines, note down the word meanings. Pruned. What is the meaning of prunes? Pruned. Pruned is to cut off, to make something smaller. Okay. Whittles. Whittles is reduce something in size, amount, or extent by a gradual series of steps. So whittles, once again, reduce something in size, amount, or extent by a gradual series of steps. And croons is sings in a soft, low voice. So what we see next, that, so it's telling, but a gardener carefully pruned it. It is 9 inches high. Every day as he whittles back the branches, the gardener croons. So the poem says that instead of letting the tree grow tall as per its nature, a gardener carefully trims the plant so that the height of the plant is about 9 inches only. Every day, while trimming the branches of the tree, the gardener sings softly. Gardener is singing softly, that means gardener is happy in trimming the tree and making it a bonsai tree. Okay, next. It is your nature to be small and cozy, domestic and weak. How lucky, little tree, to have a pot to grow in. Now, this is what the gardener says. Okay, what the gardener tells the bonsai tree, that it is your nature. The gardener sings, the nature has made the tree small and weak so that it can be grown indoors, and that the tree is lucky and fortunate to have a pot in which it can grow. Okay, so the gardener puts it in the mind of the tree. Okay, here this poem, I've already told, this poem is a metaphorical poem, and while you read the poem, while you go through the explanation, just remember one thing, that the bonsai tree is a metaphor and the gardener is a metaphor too, and they both represent two different fraternities, the bonsai tree female and the gardener male. Okay, so what is actually being done? The gardener is putting in the mind of the bonsai tree that you, it's your nature. It's not that because of my pruning, it's your nature that has made you small and weak. So you can grow indoor, and you are so lucky and fortunate to have a pot in which you can. With living creatures, one must begin very early to dwarf their growth. Okay, dwarf means stunt. Now, what does the gardener say? That restrictions must be imposed on living beings in their early stages to stop them from growing to their full potential. Okay, now this stanza actually broadens the poem's metaphor beyond just a bonsai tree. Okay, so what does he say? That with living creatures one must begin very early. So he is telling that it suggests that the act of restricting and controlling growth is applied widely to living things, not just plants. This is actually referring to humans and more precisely to females, okay, women, that they are actually controlled and they must be controlled. The restrictions must be imposed very early to dwarf their growth so that their growth can be minimized. They should not grow fully. Okay, now how to dwarf their growth? The next lines. Okay, let's read the next lines. The bound feet, the crippled brain, the hair in curlers, the hands you love to touch. Now, these three lines, the bound feet, the crippled brain, and the hair in curlers, these three lines are actually symbolism of oppression, or more precisely to say, suppression of women. Now, we may have a doubt in the third line, the hair in curlers. Can this be also called a type of oppression? If not oppression, we can say that it's actually telling women to be or to remain beautiful. The hair in curlers, as to women should always focus on remaining beautiful. That is the outside beauty. That is all. Okay. Now we come to the last two lines, the most important lines of the poem. What are those? The hands you love to touch. Now, here the poet actually tells these two lines to the gardener. Okay. The hands you love to touch, that is the leaf or the plant, the bonsai plant that you love to touch. Okay. So it's actually telling that does he love to restrict those hands that he touch? In other words, in other words, she actually means to say the men that do they actually love to restrict the woman that they love. So, should men restrict women if they love him, or should they set them free? Okay, so these two lines are actually an eye opener of the total poem. These two lines are actually written by the poet to ask us, the readers, that what's our view? Okay, should women be restricted, or should they be set free and they should live as they should be, or otherwise as the bonsai tree? Okay, that's the end of the poem. Now, after we end the poem, we must go through some very important things, which are like what is the rhyme scheme. Okay, rhyme scheme of the poem. The poem is in free verse and has no specific rhyme scheme. Okay, now what is the narration style of this poem? The narration style is that the poem is written in third person, but the last two lines are in second person. Okay, now next we are going to say about the themes. What are the themes that are present in this poem? Now, the first and most important theme that is present over here is suppression of women. After reading the poem, you all must have known that the first and foremost, or precisely to say the most important is the most important theme is suppression of women. Okay. Now, actually, Mark Piercy is an American feminist writer. Okay. Now, bonsai tree in the poem is a potent symbol. So, one other thing we should also include that symbolism is used in this poem. So, it's a potent symbol and represents suppression of woman. The poem opens with what could be the true potential of a tree as a unwieldy 80 feet tall tree on a mountain side that could be damaged only by lightning. But women are likely to have a pot and grow to a height of a mere 9 inches. So, it's truly about how women are confined into their predetermined domestic role. It is not just the size of the tree that the gardener trims, but its natural habitat as well. A small bonsai tree in an attractive pot encourages the belief that women are desirable when they are pretty, delicate, and domestic. So, this conditioning begins very early. Okay? How? By the feet being bound, thoughts being manipulated, and hair in colors. So, the whole thing shows that actually it represents the oppression of women, their inability to grow, and how society has kept them tied to customs, preventing them from achieving their full potential. Now, the next point of theme, first theme, we've already gone through, that suppression of women. Now, the next theme is manipulation and control. Okay, so how is this manipulation done? We'll go over through this. The gardener's act of carefully pruning the tree represents the manipulative ways in which society shapes and controls individuals. The gardener justifies these limitations as beneficial, creating a false narrative about the tree's nature. The very concept of a bonsai tree is an example of manipulating nature to create a desired aesthetic. Okay, this parallels the way women are pressurized to conform to unrealistic beauty standards. So, these are the two themes of this poem. So that's all. Now, one other thing, that's the poetic devices. Okay, in this poem, the poetic devices used a metaphor, as I've already told you while explaining. Okay, a metaphor, a bonsai tree is a metaphor for women. Okay, who faces inequality, discrimination, and oppression, and the gardener is also being used as a manipulator. It's being metaphorized as a manipulator or the men, the society. Okay, now, so first is metaphor, second is personification. Now, personification is another figure of speech. That is, the poet gives human attributes to the bonsai by using words such as brain and hair. Okay, and next is apostrophe. Okay, now she uses the lines: the bound feet, the crippled brain, the hair in curlers, the hands you love to teach. Sorry, you love to touch. These are actually apostrophe. Okay, so another poetic device that's used is apostrophe. And lastly, it's symbolism. As I have already told in the poem itself, while I was explaining it, that symbolism is too much in use in this poem. Okay, bonsai tree represents woman, gardener represents men or societal forces that control and shape individuals. Okay, the pot, it represents the limitations placed on the individual's potential. And lastly, bound feet, crippled brain, and hair in curlers. These symbolize specific societal practices that restrict individual growth, particularly for women. Okay, so that's the end of the poem. Hope you all have understood the poem. If you like the poem, please subscribe my channel. Meet you in the next video.